Hi, I'm Jesse, and I found this table. It was actually in perfect shape when I got it. This elderly couple in Los Gatos was just throwing it away, so I thought I could use a work table. I left it out in the rain and it just started to fall apart, and so I put this piece of plywood on top of it, and that didn't really fix it. So we're going to see if we can make it better with these pieces from pallets. These are like the stud runners or something. I've been holding on to these pieces because I didn't know how to use them because they have so many nails. But I think I found a good use for them in this table. I think a couple of them might be pine, but most of them are oak. They're super hard and heavy. And I couldn't think of a way to remove the nails, so I'm just going to push them further into the wood. I used the regular pallet wood to make a desk and a couple side tables. All those boards were good for experimentations. It's like sturdy, free wood, but it's kind of ugly, you know? See, it's starting to collapse on me here. Before I started this project, I did a ton of research on different workbenches. There's some pretty fancy ones out there. This is not going to be one of those. However, it is pretty sturdy and weatherproof, and it will be abundantly simple. And my regular drill is broken, so I'm using this backup drill. You have to use a chuck to tighten things. And because this lumber is so dense, I have to pre-drill all these holes. This drill used to belong to my childhood best friend's dad. He had some severe health problems, so they gave me a bunch of his tools, and now every time I use these tools, I think of them. When we were kids, I used to be over at their house all the time. And now that I'm using his tools, it feels like he's still kind of raising me a bit. It's kind of like that expression, standing on the shoulders of giants, you know. And I guess that is the nature of this channel, you know. I'm always just finding stuff and then trying to work with it. Like I'll be fixing a dresser that I could never build or using tools that I actually could never afford. But it's alright so long as the work gets done. I wish I used a clamp to hold the boards together right here. My fingers are not quite as strong as clamps. One or both of these boards were a little twisted, so I had to use the C-clamp to straighten them out a little bit. So I make little efforts like that to straighten out these boards, but they come out pretty twisted and crooked later on. But I mean, what is a workbench really? I just need a surface to set things down on and sometimes to clamp them too. And this thing will do that. And this table doesn't come out perfectly straight, but also the ground that I'm standing on where I do my work is always a little slope. It's pretty rare that I ever need the ground to be even. I'm just going to cut a couple pieces to go underneath to tie all these boards together. Oh, and this miter saw that I'm using here is from my friend's dad. I'd been shopping for a cheap used one, and then they showed up at my house with this one. So I might just be really lucky or highly skilled at picking friends 35 years ago. Recently I heard somebody talking about imposter syndrome and how some people are just actual imposters. I don't mind being an imposter who gets lucky once in a while. I get to do some fun furniture projects with mostly found material. These boards are really uneven here. I can put my finger in that spot. And here's another tool that I got from my friend's dad. I used to think that big clamps were overrated, and then I got them and now I love them. Like I use them all the time. I don't know how I got anything done without them. See this screw? It splits the board a little bit, but that's okay. It doesn't bother anything. I mean, the split goes pretty far down the board, but it doesn't hurt the table at all. Someday I'd like to get good at fancy joinery, but for this project, it's an outdoor table, so I just use screws. And then this piece of wood was a little bit shorter, but I found it at this length. I didn't actually cut it. And it had a sticker that said mahogany. I thought, that's a good piece of wood, but I had no idea what to use it on. It's not very big, so it just went underneath this table. I'm adding this board to the side here in this orientation. I just wanted to add a few more inches to the width, but also it might strengthen it a bit. And I really had to fight it to get lined up here. I used all my weight plus the power of a clamp. But we overcame, and then I had to use all my strength to get myself up off the ground. I had like a pretty long-term knee injury at that time. My knee still clicks pretty regularly, but it's not as bad anymore. And yeah, this tabletop's starting to look built out. You guys have been seeing me fight with these boards, and they still come out a little twisted, a little crooked. I used to really like the old rustic look, but someday it might be nice to have a new table. I sell things that are nice and polished, but for myself, I kind of get a little rustic. I'm going to start 2 cuts with this hand saw here. I don't want to use a circular saw because the nails in this thing might chip it. I don't know how people cut with these kinds of saws. It's very difficult. I'm just trying to start the cut to be straight so that I can come through with a sawzall. I want to use a sawzall here because there might be some nails, and I actually do hit a couple nails. It's no big deal for this machine though. I actually got this sawzall as a Christmas present like 10 years ago. I was just kind of getting more and more into the hobby of fixing up furniture, and I asked my dad for a miter saw for Christmas, and then I got that sawzall. It turns out he didn't know what a miter saw was. But that's okay because later on he ended up buying me a miter saw. There was a guy selling one, and it was right by my dad's house, so I asked him to go pick it up for me. And then my dad was like, hey, you didn't tell me how to pay for it too. And I'm like, well, that's what you get. I'm sure there's plenty of times where my kids trick me into buying stuff for them. So this piece of wood is getting so many screws because every one of those screws is going to connect with the ends of every one of those boards. And I've heard that putting screws into the end grain is kind of weak, but I don't really have a choice here, and it comes out pretty strong anyway. And I'm pretty lucky these boards all came came from different pallets, but they all came out the same length. This is just going to cap off the end right here. Well, they're mostly the same length. They're not perfect, and I show that here when I have to pull a clamp out to bend this thing around whichever one is too long. I want this thing sitting as flush as possible when I put these screws in. So I go ahead and get a second clamp and I crank this thing up to 1 million psi. I think one more crank and we would have seen a flashbang and it would turn this lumber into plasma. And I guess these screws did the trick, because after I remove the clamps, the board never pulls away. It's been a long time now that we've had it out in the weather, and the board still stays firm there. We'll see if it can stand the test of time and some reckless stunts. And the last thing I need to do for this tabletop is secure this board to the end here. Let's check out the underside of this table here, see if we can figure out why this thing's being so wobbly. Huh. It just feels like I was lucky it didn't collapse on me this whole time. And now I'm going to take the whole thing apart. I'm using my other backup drill. It has a Phillips bit permanently stuck in it, and I hate that. So these legs were fastened with very tiny screws, and they were put into this board that became mush. So I'm going to give these metal legs another chance, and I'm going to keep these little tiny screws for some other projects. I can't remember what I used them on, but they're all gone now. I'm just going to put in these little blocks to get the legs mostly level. Now I just got to throw a bunch of screws in this thing to finish it. It's a pretty simple table, but it'll do the job. So my friend's dad, the one who gave me all these tools, he designed and built his house. The guy was a carpenter. He did all these different construction projects like around schools and stuff like that. But then in his spare time, he designed and built this very unique and beautiful house. They're getting ready to sell their house, so I was down there cleaning it up with them. So I was just in there appreciating their dad's designs and work. Like he had ellipses-shaped staircases. I mean, you just don't see that. I mean, this guy was the real deal. And outside of this house, he never designed anything again. Anyway, what I'm saying is I think that people should try and flex their creativity more often. I'm not designing a whole house. I don't know how he even did that. It's incredible. But making a workbench table, or like build something cool in your backyard, or like build a cat tree or make a bookshelf or something. I like doing furniture projects for friends and family because then they have to awkwardly receive it. I just assume they have to like keep this coffee table I made in their living room in case I come by again. Well, anyway, here's my new workbench. It is pretty sturdy and durable, I think. I've literally never had a workbench before, so this one can fold up. I can put it away somewhere, or I can leave it out. The weather has had zero effect on it, and those holes are good for clamping things down. Let's see, this is my first time clamping something down here. I've never had a table that could do this before. Yes, mission accomplished. This is something I can set things down on and clamp things to. One of the legs here still has the rubber cap on it, so the table never sits even. It still has the cap right now. I still haven't taken it off. And that's my table. I use it all the time. And thanks for hanging with me for this project. I hope you take some time to make something too.